Kia ora, welcome back once again. I'm here for the next installment for my reaction to the New Zealand SAS Selection course, First Among Equals. So still in part one, and we are at around about the 16-minute mark, this is where I had stopped off from the first one. So let's jump on back in. All right, let's get to the video and volume. Turn that right up and play.
With time ebbing away, there is one last push to the finish line.
You know, if the bloke behind you passes you, you better start moving.
As the faster runners reach the end, there is relief. But they've only made it through the first day of 10. Meanwhile, the stragglers are in danger of falling prey to the hounds.
What I remember from the hares and hounds is that, the hounds are pretty reasonable too. From my experience, if they wanted to, they probably could have blitzed all of us because they're fresh as well. They probably could have just jumped, cranked it up to full speed and probably passed 90+%, if not everybody, if they really wanted to. But I felt that although this is a hard aspect of the selection, they're not looking to take it easy, but I suppose they have a good way of trying to find a balance so that they're not just blitzing everybody who's already been through those things. They know what it's like. They've been there. They've been at this stage of the selection. Day one, they've been put through the ringer with all the standard Defence Force tests, physical tests that you need to be able to pass, and then you've got to do this as well. This isn't the end of day one. There's a heck of a lot more that happens, well, at least from memory on my selection. And even though the guys said this is the end of day one, it's not. There's still more waiting around. There's still other activities which will be used to keep them awake. The 10 days testing, 9 to 10 days testing is full on.
The unluckiest, time has run out on selection.
If anybody was truthful, it drives you on. You're going, I'm still here today. No, I'm not.
It's true. When people drop off, gave me a burst of energy.
After 11 hours, of the 50 men who started out believing they had what it takes for New Zealand's Special Air Service, 9 were wrong.
The first day will break you physically, so then you've got to turn it on mentally.
And as the remainder will soon discover, this was the easiest day.
Among equals. Yeah, day one, the easiest day. I don't know if nah, you know what? I reckon for me, the easiest day was when we started doing the close country navigation, because I was on my own. Open country navigation, yet you're on your own too, but it's open. Like, you got no bushes to hide in. You're there, and you can be spotted and seen from miles away. So for me, the easiest day was once we got into the bush and we're out of sight, out of mind, as much as I could anyway. That for me was the easiest time. I was like left to my own devices. Now it's up to me to push. I got nobody watching me, nobody assessing me, nobody over my shoulder, nobody watching my every move. The only time I'm going to be looked at is when I rock up to the checkpoints. And I want to make sure that my J hat is tidied up, lanyard's done up properly, buttons are all done up, pockets are done up, pack straps and everything's tucked away, everything's clipped up, looking neat and tidy, webbing's done, holding my weapon correctly. And that's when I knew I needed to, you want to present well. Didn't mean that you're strolling through the bush blinking oblivious to everything, because you do have directing staff out there in the bush as well. But for me, that was the easiest day. Not day one. Day one definitely wasn't the easiest day, even though I was in good shape by the end of day one.
Lots of route marching, lots of sleepless nights, and lots of pressure put on to see if we could handle.
And all the time was this issue of, do I really want to be here? And of course, some people found out that sacrifice for them was not worth it.
And about 3 a.m. in the morning, running down the road in a pair of shorts and bare feet, I told the instructor, Joe Glenn, as he is now, Joe Pottinger then, to stick SAS up any place he liked, and I was leaving. And that was the end of the course.
That's the first I've ever heard of that, of anybody telling an instructor to stick it up their backside. Yeah, you see you later, bro. Like, if you can't handle it and you don't want to be doing that, well then, kakeets, bro. See you later.
It's the next phase of selection for New Zealand's elite SAS unit. Those who survive the physical challenges of day one now face a far tougher test.
Biggest challenge on our selection course is the second, third and fourth days.
Like SAS troopers operating behind enemy lines, the volunteers must navigate a route back to base via a series of checkpoints. Deceptively simple, open country navigation will prove the downfall of most on selection.
Yep. Also, that's the isolation factor, minimal communication, and of course it's controlled in terms of how much sleep and food they get.
The effects of food and sleep deprivation and strength-sapping pack work are intended to play havoc with their ability to function. Reading a map proves a struggle.
What's your distance?
I can tell you now, those getting to the fence, taking your pack off, lifting it over and placing it down, as you saw those candidates doing, it looks real simple, right? It looks easy. It's like, yeah, that's, no worries. It's safer. You can now climb the fence safer because you haven't got this load on your back. But that is draining in and of itself. Taking it off, putting it down, climbing over, putting it back on, getting up off the ground. It's draining, it's tiring. And yep, I did that. I think I've mentioned on other videos, there's plenty of times where I, as a junior soldier, not being confident with my navigation, I just went over the fences with my pack on. Against some of the instructions, I chose to make a tactical decision, applying who dares wins for me at that time. I was 20 years old, and I felt I needed to make as much time as I could. So wherever I could, if there was no directing staff around, I just jumped that fence with my pack on. Not jumped, but climbed over the fence with my pack on and carried on because, because I didn't want to lose time taking it off, putting it over, climbing over, putting it on, then heading off. I just wanted to climb over and then carry on my way. I didn't do that if I saw that there were staff in close proximity. Like, I never did it blatant. Although I probably was seen, and it probably looked blatant from when the DS are looking through the binoculars and then they're seeing me climb the fence. But if I couldn't see the staff, I climbed the fence with my pack on.
How long do you reckon taking?
1 hour, 12 minutes done.
But there is absolutely no help from those observing.
There's no encouragement on the selection course because the individual has to be self-motivated.
The NZSAS seek men who can think on their feet and operate alone. For some, this lack of guidance causes unexpected pressure, which increases as the pace hots up.
It looks like the same ground. I could be wrong, but Port Waikato is the area that I remember anyway, that whereby we conducted the open country navigation. Just looking at that scenery brings back memories, good memories.
A lot of people know they've got a certain amount of time, so that often weighs on people's mind. If they make an incorrect route choice, that often plays quite heavily.
Excuse me. On my selection, we had a female psychologist. That was the psych when I went through. I forget her name. But I remember the individual interview had there. Remember seeing the female psych at the end of the selection when they actually put on a little bit of a barbecue for us and some food. I couldn't really hold too much down at that stage, and I think it was partly because my body and my feet especially were just really aching and sore. But yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if they still have a female psychologist, or if they have more than one psychologist there, because as they mentioned, I think this psych mentioned at the start, they'll look at the profiling, previous performance as a good indicator of future performance. And if they feel like they can't recommend somebody, the psychs have a lot of power in terms of determining who gets through. But also at the same time, that's not to say that I think that they abuse their power. I think based on their skill, their experience, their competence of what they have, and having a good understanding, I suppose, to a degree, from an academic and observation perspective, they have a good understanding of what's required to serve and operate in a unit like that. From what I've heard, they tend to make the right decision 90+% of the time when it comes to approving or recommending individuals to progress or not. So,
when you look at A to B, it might be look most direct and fast, but you need to go A through D and E to get to B.
My nav wasn't so hot. The thing I did was made sure I was quick on my feet, so if I made an error, I could make it up.
That I didn't know about Dale. I didn't know that he must have struggled with navigation too, like I did. But hearing him say that, yep, that's where all the physical preparation and work came in handy for me, man. Like those endless hours of step-ups onto a mortar box or onto a trunk, which is maybe about 30 centimeters high, thereabouts, with a heavy load on your back, and doing that repetitively for hours. It built up my shoulders, my back, my hips, my legs, my endurance, my mindset to be able to just, stay locked in. If I could stay on task and do that for a good 2-3 hours at a time with a heavy weight and not get put off by it, I knew I was going to be in good stead, me personally, going on to selection, climbing whatever features were going to be put in front of me. I knew it was still going to be hard, but yeah, there's just something about going through that training and preparing well, day in, day out, consistently, regardless of whether you wanted. There were some days where I just didn't want to do that. And when I knew that I had that planned and that I needed to get that done, there were days that I just didn't want to do it. That's when you find out if you really have what it takes, or if you really want to be there, because you'll get off your backside and you'll get up and you'll do the work, regardless of whether you want to do it or not, because selection is going to be 100 times worse.
Sadly, even some of the more experienced soldiers have not had enough instruction or practice at navigation.
They know they've made a mistake, and then people start thinking, I'm behind. How far behind am I? What am I really doing out here? Is this getting too tough?
Once you've fallen behind in time, it's difficult to make it up.
You're put in a position where a lot of people are thinking about quitting.
And then they start that self-doubt process.
And that's where people start to drop out.
It's an unceremonial departure from selection for those who have given up.
That second, third and fourth day is where we have the highest attrition rates.
As the days blur together in the navigational phase, the volunteers struggle with the debilitating effects of sleep deprivation.
We keep them occupied and awake because we also meter out the amount of sleep that they have.
I remember just looking at those scenes, and then they're talking about the unceremonious departure, if and when you decide to quit, or if you fail to meet the timings, as it should as well. But that highest attrition rates during days 2, 3 and 4, the open country navigation, is true. You see a lot of really good soldiers quit, pull off, withdraw, because they're tired, they got no food in the guts, and it seems like this is not going to end. We know it's 3 days of open country navigation, we know that, but 3 days can just start to, when you're tired, when you're already physically been beaten up and worn down, when you're hungry and you got no food or energy in your stomach, it can be easy for people, and that's why a large majority quit That's why they withdraw. They're like, can't carry on with this. I'm on day 2 and I'm not going to be able to do this for another day or another 2 days or another step or another hour. And that's where I saw some of my friends during day 2, so day 1 of the Open Country Nav or day 2 of the Open Country Nav. It might have been day 1 of the Open Country Nav, so day 2 of selection. So I saw some of my friends, I was walking. The checkpoint wasn't too far around. It may have been 150 metres as the crow flies, but around a bit of a bend up the feature up the hill and then get there. And I saw a couple of my mates sitting on the side of the hill, and it's like, hey, what are you up to? And there was 3 of them, two that I knew, and then a third person who had, I think, plonked himself down and joined them, or maybe my mates joined him, I don't know. So, hey, what he's up to? You know, not supposed to talk, but I took a risk. No staff was around. And then that's when they said, oh, just thinking about pulling off, thinking about quitting. And as soon as they said that, I was like, oh, okay then, bro, see us later. And then I just carried on. I was like, I'm not going to get caught in this. I'm not going to sit and entertain the thought. It was never a thought. I was surprised to hear them say that. And as soon as they said those words, I was like, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm not sticking around in this space.
Tired.
Despite an increasingly fragile emotional state, they must maintain the highest levels of soldiering.
They're not normally carrying their rifle, 2 hands on the weapon, ready for use. It'll be frowned upon.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So extra little punishments dished out. You saw the candidate there just oblivious, not paying any attention. I'd hate to think that was an infantryman, but it could have been. But just grabbing the weapon by the scope, and then lowering it down where the barrel's pointing behind you, so the butt of the rifle is facing in the direction that you're going. Not cool, not a good look. The eyes of the DS and the instructors are everywhere. They'll pick that stuff up. That'll go into their little notebook. Candidate such and such. Poor carriage of his weapon, lack of awareness of his surroundings, not monitoring his arcs. The list will go on. And then from there, you will be identified and picked up for every misdemeanor that you might do. So your button not being done up, your things hanging out of your pack straps not being tucked away, your dress and appearance, your dress and awareness or lack of awareness, all of it is going to be brought to light and you will get hammered. And it's hard to get out of the spotlight once that starts happening. So your best bet is to try to avoid that from the start.
It isn't long before exhaustion and the grind of hard days take their toll.
Timings are harder and the food is less, and people push themselves further and harder each day until they just blow.
It's quite easy to see who's prepared and who's not. You know, are they still presenting themselves at checkpoints upright and quite fresh, or are they head down, a bit moping, maybe look like they're doubting themselves?
By now, even basic navigation is a challenge in concentration.
And it becomes very mental, especially towards the end, because you're not getting food and you're not getting sleep.
Where are we?
Your body keeps going. I mean, the body's a pretty amazing thing. The pain is here.
Physically, mentally, and emotionally low, more and more volunteers fall further behind.
Because that's that decision point. I mean, you're back there. There's a pack. You can leave the pack there and walk away. You actually leave that pack back on your shoulders and keep going.
If you're going on selection, my recommendation, there's only one option. You keep your pack on your back, or you put your pack back on your back and you keep going. If you want to be there and if you want to serve, if you're genuine about it, that's what you'll do. If you're not genuine about it, you'll quit.
But these soldiers are drawn on by ambition to be part of a distinguished band of brothers. An elite which has participated in conflicts around the globe since 1955. Like its modus operandi, little is known of the unit's origins. In 1940, Hitler was winning the battle for North Africa. Germany had forced Britain into desperate retreat. The British retaliation would not be through conventional airstrikes or using divisions of Allied tanks. Instead, it would come from a small British land unit that targeted enemy supply lines and stationary aircraft in hit-and-run raids. This was the birth of the SAS, the Special Air Service, the brainchild of a brilliant Scots Guard, Lieutenant David Stirling. Large raids lacked the necessary element of surprise, so Stirling devised a plan involving small groups of highly trained and superbly motivated men, with more than a touch of maverick.
Small groups inserted behind the enemy lines. It could inflict damage quite out of proportion to the number of people involved.
Even their name, the Special Air Service, was designed to fool German intelligence that the attacks were from large air divisions.
Watch the Rogue Heroes series or episodes if you can find that. I think they've got some on YouTube or some on whatever it is that they've watched it on Prime or whatever. But that'll give you a good insight into how the Special Air Service was formed. As to its accuracy, I'm no expert or I'm no historical buff by any means, but it's a good watch, and it gives you a bit of an insight into how the SAS was formed and the different types of personalities and characters that make up the unit to this day. So yeah, if you haven't already, check out Rogue Heroes. That's a great series. I'm not sure if there's still more episodes to come, but hopefully there is.
The SAS soon linked up with another motorised commando raiding party called the Long Range Desert Group, or the LRDG. Only 100 men strong, the LRDG was stacked with New Zealand soldiers.
He knew of New Zealanders as being, as he put it, farmers, and they knew how to look after their vehicles. They're very adaptable. If there's anything that could be done, they would do it.
Like the SAS, the LRDG's methods were unconventional and missions clandestine.
It wasn't normal for the Long Range Desert Group to wear any insignia that indicated who they were. A shirt, a singlet, a pair of shorts, mountain climbing boots, and socks. That was our uniform. Yeah. And a smile.
Together, the SAS and LRDG travelled across the deserts, wreaking havoc against the enemy.
Shooting up convoys, blowing up dumps when they found them, and raiding airfields. But they say that the SAS and the Long Range Desert Group destroyed more planes on the ground than the Air Force did in the whole of the Egyptian campaign.
North Africa was New Zealand's introduction to the SAS. It would be the start of an enduring relationship, which today sees a new generation of hopefuls aspiring to join. And as the navigational phase moves into its final day, weary bodies rebel under the relentless pack marching.
I got major blisters. My feet were majorly swollen to the point that a few days into the selection, I couldn't take my boots off, or else I'd never be able to put them back on again.
It's amazing how that happens to some people who have done a heck of a lot of preparation, training, skilled, experienced soldiers, been used to being out in the bush, been wet, cold, hungry, feet soaked, soggy, damp, unable to air them out, unable to dry them out, and how that you would think, well, I thought anyway, you've got all that experience, you go through that, your feet would be hardened and toughened up for that. That's what I thought anyway, but it's amazing that still, even after all of that, that doesn't typically guarantee that your feet and that parts of your body will be good to go. And hearing him speak, hearing Eddie talk about what his feet were like early on, and then seeing one of the guys on my selection course, who's, I'm pretty sure he's still serving in the NZ unit now, seeing how bad his feet were, especially come time when we're into the open country, close country navigation. I thought there's no way he's going to finish these next 3 days of the close country, let alone complete the 60-kilometre pack march at the end. And he completed all of it, got badged. We were on cycle together, got badged, and just incredible, amazing, what you can go through in spite of the physical pain and suffering that you may be feeling. Thankfully, I didn't have that. I felt like I prepared well. I did other little things to help try to harden my feet. The only time my feet really gave me any grief was at the end or nearing the end of the 60-kilometre pack march when they swelled right up. Yeah, it had some blisters, but even that wasn't concerning. It was just the pain of my feet having expanded so much from not being smart enough to, hoof it for a bit and then stop, put my feet up for 2 to 3 minutes, then get up and then push again. I was already confident that I could easily make those 60 kilometers in 20 hours. Easily. I was like, that's how I felt anyway. I was like, yeah, I can do this easy. But in my eagerness, I stayed on my feet longer than I should have, and I just kept going and going and going and going, only stopping to fill up my water when I needed to, and then carried on again. Stopped and had a feed out of the ration pack, because that was the only time we got to eat our ration pack at the end, and then just got up and carried on again. I should have taken more frequent rests. I reckon that would have saved my feet and me all the pain and suffering after. I would have been walking around a lot better at the end of selection.
Straight across the shoulders, because there's the hold in there. That's where all the pain is.
Fatigue and unpredictable terrain are the cause of sprains and strains. For those crippled by their exertions, bright red panels on their packs ensure easy pickups when aerial rescue becomes necessary. As the casualties mount, the numbers still in contention fall. These hardy few are now running on empty.
People are going, well, if this is how I feel at this stage, I'm not going to make it.
Injuries, exhaustion and a loss of willpower mean this is the moment of truth.
Yeah, there's a lot of people dropping out, eh? I've got nothing left.
It's a good thing. Well, at least from here. Just from an energy uplift perspective.
For 3 days on end, hungry and tired, they've marched with crippling loads. And then the navigation phase is over. For many, it's been a test of endurance beyond their limits.
I think the pain was all over. The pain was all over your body.
Pain's still just getting started.
The remaining volunteers are returned to barracks. With their bodies and minds reeling and the promise of more days to follow, many realise their SAS dream is over.
Sort of sitting down going, is this really for me? What do I get out of it? Why am I doing it?
Throughout the long night, knowing what lies ahead becomes too much for fragile psyches. A trickle of withdrawals becomes a flood.
I have to admit, I'm not saying that Eddie had those thoughts that he was just talking about. I think he may be speaking more from the perspective of what may have been going through the minds of other candidates and or from selections that he's assisted and supported in the past. Excuse me. But for me, I never had the thought of, do I want to do this? There was just zero doubt in my mind. Reflecting back to Mr. Moffat from my first video of this series, nothing was going to stop him. Like I knew that that's where I wanted to be. I felt like that was where I was supposed to be. That's what I felt for me. I felt like I was meant to be an operator within the SAS. I didn't know what they did or how they did things, but I just felt that that's where I'm meant to be. That's where I'm meant to serve. So grateful that I had the opportunity to go on and do that in Australia, but definitely grateful for the foundations that were set for me in terms of going through the New Zealand selection and cycle. Yeah. Anyway, we'll pause that one there. This is probably a good good space to pause it, a little bit less than the 15 minutes, 16 minutes that the first one went for, but it's about 30 minutes on the video there, or just under. So thanks again for sticking around. Hopefully you're enjoying these. If you've got any questions about the NZ selection or the Australian one, feel free to whack them in the comments and shoot them through. I'll answer your questions as soon as I can, within reason. And yeah, keep turning up, everybody. Keep smashing. Whatever it is that you're going through, stay in the fight. And until the next video,